Hello everybody and welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are going to be doing my 2025 summer collection update. This is the first time that my collection has actually decreased in size. Now I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because I'm aiming for quality, not necessarily quantity. I just had a lot of aircraft in my collection that were either duplicates or I just didn't really need anymore, so I've actually gone on a bit of a selling spree and I've sold quite a few of my models. I believe in the last collection update I was around about the 450 mark. However, I recently counted my collection and I had exactly 400 aircraft exactly in my collection. So we've decreased a little bit in size, but we've also of course gained a few aircraft as well. And I think I'm sort of trying to perfectly round off my collection in a very specific way. So I've got rid of a lot of the odd ones out essentially. I do still have a few gaps in my collection though, and I'll go over some of those gaps while we go around my collection. But then once those gaps are filled in, and there's not many, I would probably call my collection quote unquote complete. And what I mean by that is I've essentially got every aircraft that I want to get, and after that I would probably only get new types of aircraft or new liveries. So let's say as an example United order the A220, then I'll get that of course, or say just as a random example, say Spirit get a new livery, I would get to the new Spirit livery. But apart from that I probably wouldn't need to add any other aircraft to my collection. And also that brings me on to another point, and that is I'm contemplating whether I should go to annual collection updates versus what I've done for the last 10 years, and that's semi-annual collection updates. So of course the last 10 years I've done one every winter and every summer. However, now as I'm not collecting as much, my collection isn't really changing that much in between updates. So I think from now I will just have like a 2025 collection update, a 2026 collection update, and onwards. But also I would like to note that this is the 10-year anniversary of doing these collection updates, and also it's almost my 10-year anniversary for the channel as well. 10 years ago I filmed my first collection update, which is pretty cool. You can go back there and see, you know, which aircraft, and very few of them I actually still have. I know I sold a lot of my older aircraft, and I've obviously brought in a lot of newer ones. But yeah, I'm pretty excited with, you know, how my collection is coming along, and I sort of have an end goal in sight. So I hope you enjoy this 2025 collection update. Okay, so starting off where we usually do in my 1 to 200 military cabinets, this one has changed quite a bit, mainly in the fact that we've sold a few of these in here, but we've also gained one very cool one, which I will get to. But starting off here with the Russian bombers, we have this Tupolev 160 Blackjack bomber. We then have the Tupolev 22M bomber there. We then have the Tupolev 95 Bear bomber. Of course, I'm having issues with the landing gear on this one, hence why I have a rock sort of wedged up against its tail there just to keep it upright. But then moving forward, starting off here, we have the US Marines V-22 Osprey. We have the French Dassault Mirage 2000. We have the French Dassault Rafale. We have the Royal Air Force Typhoon. We have another Royal Air Force Typhoon. This one is in the Anarchy 1 colour scheme. We then have the Royal Air Force Tornado and the Royal Air Force English Electric Lightning. Moving down to some of the F-18s, I've sold a few of these just because I had loads. Here we have the two Legacy Hornets here. One on the left there is a Navy Legacy Hornet, and the one on the right is an Aggressor livery Hornet. We then have the Super Hornets here, all in various color schemes. Of course, I sold all of my regular color scheme ones just because, well, they didn't really sort of suit, well, they were just a bit boring basically. So now I just have 3 of these Super Hornets. We then have the F-35. This is the Royal Australian Air Force F-35A. I would love to get the B and the C variant. Don't really care what country they're from, I'd love to see just a B and a C. In the back there we have an F-5 Tiger II. We have an F-4 Phantom. We have an Iranian F-4 Phantom. We have an Iranian F-14 Tomcat there. We have an Aggressor F-14 and a US Navy F-14 back there. Moving down, we have the F-22 Raptor. We have the new aircraft. This is the Russian Su-57. It's a really, really cool aircraft. We then have the Vietnamese Su-27, the Russian Su-27. We have the Japanese Air Self-Defense Force F-15 and the US Air Force F-15. We have an A-10 back there. We have another A-10. We then have a regular color scheme F-16, and then we have some aggressor color scheme F-16s in the back there. Next up, moving on to my sort of US domestic cabinet, starting off here with the American shelf. We have 2 American Eagle CRJ 200s. We then have 2 American Eagle ERJ 145s. We have 2 American Eagle CRJ-700s. We then have a gap here, which I'm hoping to add 2 American Eagle CRJ-900s. We then have the American Eagle Embraer E170 in the retro color scheme. We have 2 American Eagle Embraer E175s. Moving to the back there, we have 2 737-800s. We have a 737 MAX 8. Here I would like to get an A319, an A320 and a regular A321. Just waiting for a company like NG to release some of those. We then have an American A321neo and an American 757-200. Moving down to Delta, we're almost there with Delta, but we have a couple gaps. Starting off on the left there, we have the Delta CRJ-200, the CRJ-700 and the CRJ-900. We have 2 of those in fact. We then have a Delta Embraer E170, a Delta Embraer E175, the Boeing 717, the McDonnell Douglas MD-90. We have the 737-800 here and the -900. Moving to the back, we have the A220-100. Got a gap there for the A220-300. We then have an A319, an A320 and an A321. We have a gap for the A321neo, and then we have a 757-200 in the back there. Moving down to my shelf of Southwest special liveries. So we have 1 sort of row of -700s and 1 row of -800s in the back there. So starting off on the left, we have the Colorado color scheme, the Missouri color scheme, the Louisiana color scheme, the Florida color scheme, the Illinois color scheme, the Maryland color scheme, the Texas color scheme, and the California color scheme. In the back there, we have again the Illinois color scheme, the New Mexico color scheme, the Tennessee color scheme, the California color scheme, the Hawaiian color scheme, and then here we have, this isn't really a state livery, it's just the Freedom 1 color scheme. And then I have almost 1 more space here for a -800. So hopefully we get a release, well, hopefully Southwest actually paints the Maryland 1 color scheme onto either a MAX 8 or a -800, and then I can pop that back there in that gap. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. We then have regular color schemes from Southwest. So here, starting off on the left, we have 2 -700s. We have 2 brand new MAX 7s, so these aren't actually in service with Southwest yet, but I'm waiting for the day that these are. We then have 2 -800s, 2 MAX 8s, and then in the back here we have some older color scheme aircraft. So we have 2 of the Canyon Blue 737-700s, 2 of the Canyon Blue 737-800s. We have a Canyon Blue 737 MAX 8, a Desert Gold 737 MAX 8, and a Desert Gold Boeing 727. And then moving down to some other airlines, here we have Spirit. So starting off on the left, we have an A319, we then have an A320, we have an A320neo, another A320neo, we have an A321, another A321, and an A321neo. Pretty happy with Spirit, don't really want to add any other aircraft, don't really need to add any other aircraft. In the back there, we then have Breeze. On the left there, we have their A220-300, and on the right, we have their Embraer E195. We then here have the Frontier A321, the Frontier A320neo, the Sun Country old livery 737-800. I would like to get the new livery as well. And then we have the Allegiant 737 MAX 8-200. I would also like to get an A320 and maybe their MAX 7 when they eventually get that into service. And then moving on to United, this is a cabinet that has changed quite a lot just because I've sold a lot of my duplicate models. We had so many United aircraft in here and I just didn't need all of them. So I've sort of limited myself to 2 of every mainline aircraft and then 3 of every regional aircraft. So here we have 3 of the United Express CRJ-200s. We have 3 of the United Express CRJ-550s and 3 of the United Express Embraer E175s. Moving back, we have 2 of the A319s. I used to have 6 of these, which I just didn't need 6. So there we go, we got 2 of them. Got a gap for the A320 when we eventually get a good release of that in the new color scheme. We then have a MAX 8, a MAX 9, and a MAX 10, all in the new color scheme. I've been waiting to get these 3 for a while altogether. We then have a MAX 10 in the SAF livery. Moving back to some of the older 737s, got a gap there for a 737-700, and then we have 2 737-800s, 2 737-900ERs. We have a 737-800 in the Star Alliance livery and a 737-800 in the Star Wars livery. Moving down, very sad that these have now been repainted in real life, but we have the 2 Herat here livery Boeing 757-200s. On the left there we have the California livery, and on the right we have the New York livery. We then have the 757-200 in the regular livery, the 757-300, and we have 2 of the brand new A321neos. In the back there we have 2 737-300, 2 767-300, sorry, and 2 767-400ERs. Moving down, we have a gap for 2 United 787-8s, which I will be getting into my collection pretty soon. We then have a -9 and a -10, and then in the back we have the 777s. So we have 2 of the 222s and 1 777-300ER. Of course, as I've sold a lot of my aircraft, as you can see, the boxes here, they're not all filled up. So of course, when we get some more United aircraft into my collection, I'll add some more boxes back here just to fill that up. But we have some 1-200 aircraft down here as well. So here we have this United Stars and Bars Boeing 727, and then we have a Blue Tulip United Express Embraer E170. I've also got sort of a gap here for a couple more 1-200 aircraft. I would love to get the new livery, Embraer ERJ-145 with the winglets in the new livery. I think that looks awesome. I would love to get that in 1-200 when we eventually get it to go down here, along with maybe a Sol Bass aircraft as well. Not really sure which one, maybe one of the older 737s. I'm not too sure, but this cabinet's coming together slowly but surely. Next, moving on to my 1-400 military cabinet. On the left there we have the San Antonio C5 Galaxy. We have the Dover C5 Galaxy. We have the Royal Air Force C-17, the Dover Air Force Base C-17. Moving down, we have the Chinese Y-20, the Chinese IL-76. I love the IL-76. It just looks incredible. I don't know what it is about that aircraft, but I just love it. We have the A400s. We have a Royal Air Force A400, a Luftwaffe A400, and a French A400. I'd love a Kazakh A400 to go in that gap there. And then moving on to the C-130s, we have a Japanese Air Self-Defense Force C-130, a US Coast Guard C-130, the Blue Angels C-130, the Royal Netherlands Air Force C-130, Royal Air Force C-130, US Air Force Ski-Bird C-130, and a regular US Air Force C-130 back there. Moving down, we have the new Air Force One. This is based on the 747-8. We have the current or the older Air Force One, which is of course based on the 747-200. We have commonly known as Air Force Two, but this is the C-32, sorry. We then have the Royal Air Force Vespina color scheme, A330 MRTT. The German Air Force or government A350-900, the French A330-200. We then have the French A330 MRTT and the Royal Air Force A330 MRTT. Moving down, we have on the left there a Royal Air Force P-8 Poseidon, and on the right a US Navy P-8 Poseidon. We have a Royal Air Force Bristol Britannia, a Royal Air Force de Havilland Comet. We have the Arizona KC-135, the North Carolina KC-135, and a Hawaiian KC-135. Back there we have the Il-96, which is essentially the Russian Air Force One. We then have an Omega tanker, Boeing 707, a Royal Air Force VC-10, sorry, and then we have a Royal Air Force A321neo in the back there. We then, on the left, have the B-52. We have the Ellsworth B-1, the Dias B-1. We have the E-4B Doomsday plane, and then down here we have the Virgin Galactic VSS Unity. Next up here, moving on to my retro cabinets, and you'll notice that I have now moved Alaska and my Canadian aircraft out of this cabinet. So they now have a new home, which we will get to later. So here we have some of the British Airways retro color schemes on the 747-400s. So starting off on the left there, we have the BOAC color scheme, the Negus color scheme, and the Landor color scheme. Moving down to some of the Project Utopia color schemes, we have two 737-200s on the left there. We then have three 757-200s, and we have a 777-200 ER. We then have my wide fleet of 747-400s in various color schemes. I won't go over each color scheme just because there are so many, but then moving down, we then have the Gulf Air L1011 on the left there. We have the American Chrome 767-200, the American Chrome One World 757-200, the American Chrome 757-200, the American Chrome MD-83. In the back there, we then have some 747SPs. So we have the TWA 747SP, the Pan Am 747SP, the United Sol Bass 747SP, and the Qantas 747SP in the back there. Next up here we have my European cabinets. So starting off here with Air France, we have this Air France A350-900. We then have the Air France 777-200ER, the Air France 777-300ER. We have the KLM Embraer E195-E2 on the right there, and the A321neo here. We have the KLM 787-9. We have the Swiss A330-300 and the Scandinavian A350-900. Moving down on the left there, we have the Aeroflot A330-300, and on the right we have the Brussels A330-300. We then have the Turkish 777-300ER and the Turkish 787-9. We have the Austrian 767-300, and then moving down we have the different colours of the new Icelandair livery on the 737 MAX 9s. We have the blue, the green, and the purple. Then over here we have the old colour scheme on the 737 MAX 8. We have the 757-200 there, and then in the back there we have the 1990s 757-200 in their old 1990s livery. We then have the Hekla Aurora 757-200, the 100 years of independence for Iceland livery on the 757-300. We then have the Play A321neo and the Play A320neo. And then finally moving down here to Aer Lingus, we have two Aer Lingus A321neos. We then have the A330-300 in the current colour scheme, the A330-200 in the older colour scheme, and the A330-300 in the old colour scheme. Next up here we have my cabinets for my African and Asian airlines. So starting off here we have this South African A340-600. We then have the South African A350-900 and the South African A330-300. We then have the Egypt Air 787-9 down the end there, and then moving down to Royal Air Maroc. Starting off on the left, we have the old color scheme on the 787-8, In the middle there, we have another 787-8 in the new One World color scheme, and then here we have the 787-9 in the current color scheme. We then have the Ethiopian 787-9, the Ethiopian 787-8, and the Ethiopian 777-200LR. Moving down, we then have the Air India 787-8, the Air India A350-900, the Saudi Arabian 777-300ER, and the Air China 777-300ER. We then have the Cathay Pacific A350-1000. Got a gap there for the new Korean Air 787-9, which hopefully I will get pretty soon. And then here we have the old livery Korean Air 787-9. We then have the Vietnamese 787-9, and then moving down we have the ANA 777-300ER, the Air New Zealand 787-9, the ANA Star Wars livery 787-9, and the Japan Airlines 787-9 down the end there as well. Next up here, this one is sort of my miscellaneous cabinets for a lot of my Central American aircraft, my cargo aircraft, and my private aircraft. So starting off here, we have this Copa Airlines 737-800. We then have this Copa 737 MAX 9, this Aeromexico 737-800. I would like to get the new Aeromexico livery in here soon. Then we have the Volaris A320neo, the Avianca A320, the Avianca A321neo, and the Avianca A330-200. Moving down, we have the Atlas Air 767-300, the Atlas Air 747-8, the Cargolux 747-8, and the UPS 747-8. We have the UPS MD-11, the UPS 767-300, the FedEx 767-300, the FedEx 757-200, the DHL 757-200, and the FedEx ATR 72. Then moving down, we have an empty shelf here, and then we have the La Campogne 757-200, the Trump 757-200, the Trump Shuttle 727, and the Air Secure Columbia 727 as well. Next up, moving on to my British Airways cabinets. My goal with British Airways is to essentially just collect one of every type of aircraft British Airways operate. We're almost there. We have one of every wide body that they operate, but I need a few of the narrow body still. So starting off on the left there, we have the British Airways City Flyer Embraer E170. Those were retired at the start of 2021. I do also need the Embraer E190. We then, in the middle there, have the A318. We then have the A319. We have the BA Better World livery A320neo. We have the A321neo. I'm just missing a few from the narrow-body Airbuses, like the A320 in the regular livery, the A320neo in the regular livery, and the A321neo. Next up here we have the 757-200. These were retired back in 2010. We then have the 767-300. Again, these were retired in 2018. In the back there we have the 777s. So here we have the One World 777-200ER, the regular livery 777-200ER, and the 777-300 in the back there. I have a gap there for the 777X when we eventually get a release of that. Then moving down, of course, on the left there we have the A380. We have the A350-1000, the 787-8, the 787-9, and the 787-10. We then have some 1 to 200 aircraft. So here we have the huge A380 in 1 to 200 scale. We have the Concorde. We have the de Havilland Twin Otter, the Embraer E170, and the British Airways Chinook. And then moving down here we have 3 Concordes, all with their own separate registrations. We have the One World livery Boeing 747-400 and the regular livery 747-400. Next up here we have some various different airlines in this cabinet. So here we have a shelf for Virgin Atlantic. So starting off here, we have the Virgin Atlantic 747-400. We have the A350-1000. In the back there, we have the A330-300. We then have the A330-900 and the 787-9. Moving down to Lufthansa, and we now have every wide body that Lufthansa operate. So starting off here, we have the A350-900, the 787-9, the A330-300, the A340-300, the A340-600, the 747-400, the 747-8, and the A380. Moving down here, we have the Iberia A350-900, the ITA Airways A330-900, the Condor A330-900, and the Norse 787-9. Moving down, we have the 1-400 Antonov 225, and then here we have the 1-200 scale Antonov 225. Now these next couple of cabinets have changed the most since the last collection update, so I've moved a lot of my North American aircraft over to these cabinets. So we have a shelf here of the old United Continental color scheme aircraft. We then have a shelf for my Canadian and JetBlue aircraft, and then we now have a whole cabinet filled with my Alaska Air Group cabinet. So starting off here with the United Continental color schemes, we have two United Express Dash 8 200s. We have two United Express Embraer E170s. We then have two United Express E175s. We then have one A320. We have a 737-800, a 737 MAX 9, a 757-200, a 757-300, a 767-300, a 787-10, a 777-200ER, and a 777-300ER. And then moving down, here we have my Canadian and JetBlue aircraft. So starting off over here with Porter, we have on the left there a Porter Dash 8 Q400, and on the right the new Porter Embraer E195-E2. We then have Air Canada Express, so here we have the CRJ 200, the CRJ 900, the Embraer E175. We then have some mainline aircraft here, so here we have the A220-300, the 737 MAX 8, and the WestJet 737-800. Moving back to JetBlue, we have the Embraer E190, the A220-300, the new color scheme A320, the A321, and the A321neo. Then moving down here, this was a gift. This is actually a 1/72 scale Royal Navy Buccaneer. This is an Airfix kit that was built for me as a gift, as I said, and it looks incredible. I think at this point I would love something else to go in this gap here, maybe a Jaguar or something. I'm not too sure, but this one looks absolutely beautiful. Next, as mentioned, moving on to this cabinet, which is entirely the Alaska Air Group. So this is now including Hawaiian Airlines. Now that Alaska have purchased Hawaiian Airlines, they now come under the Alaska Air Group. However, they will still be keeping their livery and their respective aircraft. They'll just be operating under the Alaska Air Group. So it's pretty cool to have them in here with Alaska. But starting off here with some of the Alaska regular livery aircraft, we have the Embraer E175 there. We have the 737-800, the 737-900ER, and the 737 MAX 8. I do also want to get the MAX 9 and the MAX 10. I'll probably put them in that gap there and then put these two back there eventually when I get them. But here we have the Honouring Those Who Serve 737 MAX 8 and the Honouring Those Who Serve 737-800 with an Alaska Airlines pin there. Moving back, we have two Salmon 30 Salmon 737-800s. We have the newer Alaska Air Cargo 737-700F and the older 737-400F. I would also like to get a passenger variant of the 737-400 eventually. But then moving down to some of the Airbus aircraft, here we have the A320. we have the A321neo, the More to Love A321neo, we have the More to Love 737-900ER, we have the Star Wars Disneyland livery on the 737-800, the Education Changed the World 737-900, and the newer Salmon Indigenous livery on the 737-800. Then moving back to Hawaiian, we have the Boeing 717, the Airbus A321neo, the Airbus A330-200 and the Boeing 787-9. Moving down, we then have a 1-200 honouring those who serve 737-800. I flew this one up to Barrow in Alaska a couple years ago, so I got this model as sort of a memoriam piece to that trip, I guess you could say. And then here we have an antler that I got from Jackson, Wyoming last year. Then next up here we have a shelf for Air Koryo, which is North Korea's airline. So starting off here we have the IL-76, we have the Tupolev 204-100, we have the Tupolev 204-300, we have the IL-62, we then have the Tupolev 154. Then moving down to Emirates, here we have the Emirates A380 in the new colour scheme, the 777-300ER in the new colour scheme, and the A350-900 again in the new colour scheme. Here we have the Riyadh Air 787-9. Moving down, we have the Royal Jordanian 787-8. We have the Etihad 787-9, the Qatar One World A350-900, and the Qatar regular livery A350-900. We then have the ANA A380s in the orange livery, the green livery, and the blue livery. And finishing off here with some of my 1-200 aircraft. On the left there we have the British Airways retro colour scheme for British European Airways on the A319. In the middle there we then have the retro colour scheme on the 747-400 for BOAC. We then have the BMI A319, of course BMI. We're an airline, British Midlands International it stands for, and they merged with British Airways back in 2012, and some of their narrowbody Airbuses are still in service with British Airways to this day. We then have the Negus colour scheme here on the 747-400. This was the first livery that British Airways had after BOAC and BEA merged, I believe in 1974. British Airways had this colour scheme from 1974 all the way through to 1984 when they got this colour scheme, the Landor colour scheme, this one again on a 747-400. Now this aircraft here isn't anything to do with British Airways, this is the Royal Air Force A321neo. But then, of course, British Airways had the Landor livery from 1984 up to 1997 when they got the current colour scheme. On the left there we have an A320neo, and centre we have the 747-400, and then last but not least down here we have the Royal Air Force A330 MRTT in the Vespina colour scheme. And that does conclude all of the aircraft in my collection. So with that, I want to thank you very much for watching today's video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.